Boom. All right, friends. Great to see you. It has been a month since we have gotten to chat, and here you all are, and we're making it. So, seriously though, all so excited to see everybody. It's so great. I know a bunch of people will be catching it later, which is great too. So for today's call, I tried to, Kristen and it's kind of hilarious. I said, Kristen, how can we make this title of this call as not specific and general, but yet say what it actually is to kind of leave room for openness? Because fall, depending on which part of the country you're in right now, I was right. It was Nacy. I get the home run. Dude, look at that roof on your car, man. Look at that thing. Dude, that's like, man, that's really nice. I like that. All right. Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, so today's call, I literally tried to keep it as open as possible because I know that like fall kickoff is a general term that we all usually use for the fall, but yet it means 1,000 things right now. So fully recognizing that fall kickoff, first of all, in some parts of the country doesn't mean anything right now because we're just trying to continue to figure out what reopening sort of looks like, or, my church just started having in-person services 2 weeks ago, I think it is. And then that was just for volunteers. And so it's kind of phasing in. I know at other parts of the country, they've been kind of open the whole time. And so they haven't really, they've slowed some with kind of what it looked like, but it's kind of been the same. So fully recognize that fall kickoff call is very generic. And so really wanting just to create some space for dialogue of kind of what it looks like where you're at, kind of what you're anticipating, those types of things. And then what I would love for you to do, if you would, if everybody could just say real quick who you are, where you live, and then kind of what your role is at the church. And we'll go super quick through this because I want to get to the conversation. But Gibson, can you start us?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Gibson. I'm in Richmond, Indiana at Life Spring Church, and I'm the next gen pastor here overseeing children, students, and our daycare, and kind of coming up for air because we got some of the daycare stuff solved. So.
Gibson became a professional at pandemic daycare for the last 6 months. Holy Moses, bro. Oh, that's a ton. Matthew, go for it, bro.
All right, Matt Hooper. I'm down in Westminster, South Carolina. We're about a half hour southwestish of SWU. And I'm co-pastor here, but youth ministry falls under my half of the pastoring.
That's awesome. McConnell.
And honestly, until they have to, I'm not letting them take it away.
Hey, I'm Zach McConnell, Linwood Wesleyan Church in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. My official title is Next Gen Pastor, but I think it's officially changing to Next Task Pastor because I feel like that's everything we're doing. From one task to the next.
That was awesome, bro. It's so true right now. Nacy, can you talk and not wreck?
Hey, we'll try to. So Ian out here west in Greeley in Windsor, Colorado, overseeing students in residency.
With a big, beautiful blue sky. Love it.
Yeah, it's a rough one today, man. Rough one.
No kidding, bro. It's a little overcast here, man. It's a little overcast, but good to see you, brother. Bradford.
Yo, Bradford Rogers. I'm in New Brunswick, Canada, and surprisingly, it's actually really warm here today.
By warm, you mean like 60? Well, I mean,
yeah, it's not
me.
that amazing. Yeah, no, it's yeah, and I'm the director of student ministries here at King's Church, which is just high school and junior high. So
always good to see you, my man.
Cool beans.
Amanda.
I'm Amanda, and I am in Croswell, Michigan at Croswell Wesleyan, and I'm the kids pastor.
Awesome. Kristen.
Hey, Indianapolis, Indiana / Fishers, Indiana. And I work with Zach.
Kim.
I'm Kim. I'm Director of Children's Ministries, and I'm in High Point, North Carolina.
Elizabeth.
I am Elizabeth, and I'm at Hayworth Wesleyan Church in High Point, North Carolina. So look at that.
And then Kimberly, are you there? If not, it's totally cool. But I want to give you a chance. Going once. Oh. Oh. Okay.
Sorta. I'm like,
It's a little choppy, but that's okay. We know you're with us. All right. Well, mine's all weird now. Okay. Cool. All right. Joel, that was sorry. I'm like, oh, Drew's here. Nope, it's Joel. Joel, so tell everybody your name and where you're at, man.
I am Pastor Joel. I'm in the thumb of Michigan, and I'm using my pastor's paid account.
Dude, that was awesome. I literally am looking at that picture. I'm like, I think that's Joel's pastor. I'm like,
oh, it's me.
That was awesome, bro. Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, so we're gonna jump in, and so two things real quick. One, Kristen's gonna put a link in the chat. Probably a month ago now, month and a half ago, we did a call on how to lead when you're tired, and so I went ahead and pulled out of that call, and I actually re-recorded a training for you on how to lead when you're tired. It's a 36-minute training, so it's super fast, but all focused, because basically the premise was when everything started going on, I was just doing some research. I'm like, I am really tired and just want to try to figure out how to lead when I'm tired, and basically did a Google search, and there wasn't anything on Google hardly about leading when you're tired. It was all about how not to get tired, but actually leading when you're tired, there was not much on there. So I recorded this 36-minute training. Kristen made some great notes if you want notes. I also put the PowerPoint in there as well. So feel free, if you want to use it if you have a team of people or a staff, you can do that. If you want to use it for you or whatever, like just use it however's helpful. Or if you hate it, just don't delete it out of the Dropbox. Like just leave it in there, like, because somebody else might like it, but you don't have, do whatever you want with it. But just as a little way to kind of help, because I don't know about you, but I have been very tired. And Nacy and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. It's like tired with no end in sight at times, right? So my hope is that this training, which is super practical, by the way, it is a lot. I mean, there's a lot of heart in it, but it is a lot of like, try this, give this a shot. Maybe this will, it's very, very, very practical. I actually did this same training for the entire building here at headquarters for one of our leadership moments. And so it's a very practical training. So Kristen, do that in the chat. Feel free to take that, use it for you, use it for your team, whatever. It's helpful. But let's jump into some conversation about fall kickoff and all those types of things. And actually, McConnell, I'm going to, because you and I were talking earlier this morning. And so can you just kind of share a little bit about like what you're thinking for the fall? And we'll just kind of, again, several of you have been on these calls before, but for those of you who haven't, this literally is a call for us. So there's really not, like, I don't come to these calls with like this heavy agenda, like, okay, we need to get through these 6 points for this to be a good call. For this to be a good call is for us to engage with each other and share and ask questions and, hey, what are, those types of things. That's really the goal for this call. And so McConnell, can you start us off? Because you mentioned something earlier that was interesting to me about kind of like, you showed me your whiteboard. You're like, hey, I kind of have 2 paths for the fall. Like, what are you kind of planning in the big sky country of South Dakota?
I'm trying to, part of my great privilege of being a part of this meeting is I want to pick people's brains and just hear what everybody else is doing. And I've really got 2 roadmaps I'm going with right now. And I'm going off the mentality to being prepared to activate either one of these maps at any given point. We've got our typical youth group standard, and we like to do like a theme day. So rather that's like, hey, we're having a slushy night. We map out all those things throughout the month. Other things that we've mapped out, we're going to have a big Paint Wars event, or we'll pull out a big life-size Sorry board game. So we theme out every night and put it for the whole semester. But I've also kind of created another roadmap to what happens if COVID-19 doesn't allow us to meet back in person. So I've kind of created a digital roadmap. So there's two different roadmaps. One is talking about what's the message series I'm hitting on. And the digital roadmap is like, what are the digital message series at smaller bite-sized portion? Because I learned this past semester, you can't put a 15 to 20-minute message on YouTube without kids just clicking to the next thing. So there's a different sermon map of bite sizes to go on with that. But I don't know which one is going, but I have to be prepared for both. And I've just kind of thrown my hands in the air. Like, I just have to be prepared. I don't know what's coming up. I don't even know what's happening next week. There's just so much confusion. So that's what I've been doing. That's just trying to be prepared for everything.
Thanks, bro. And we'll just call that open. So anybody else that wants to jump in, have at it.
I'll go next. I get a lot more of a open drawing board for mine because the youth group here was pretty much dead through a variety of reasons. So COVID was a nice little make it easier to go nuclear option of let it be dead for a while before bringing it back. Which also on the bad side though means pretty much I only have one option right now of going in person. It's not like you can go no relationship to a video Zoom thing. So we're looking at it. We have an amazingly large youth room. We're doing our VBS in it for 20 kids because we can space them out. And so I'm going to do the same thing. It'll be purposely, I can probably get a few more teenagers in it because they're not going to be moving around as much. But we can get 20 to 30 teens spaced out down there. We're going to start just doing alpha for teens, just because that means for 12 weeks, I can tell them, hey, come here, there will be pizza. And we can just meet over a meal. Plus, if Alpha's doing the teaching, I can do the socializing and not have to be distracted by focusing on the teaching. So that's going to be a good core. We have a really strong partnership now with Young Life. So Sunday night, I get to do youth group, and some of their volunteers will come to our group, and then I get to go to their group, and we're basically going to work together because we're the only church partnering with them, that any teen that does not have a home church, we are just shepherding this into being the home church and growing and discipling their family from that point. But pretty much our whole strategy relies on we can't shut down. Otherwise, it's just going to be wait until we open. We don't have the relationship core to do a different strategy yet.
Cool. It's great. Elizabeth, what things are kind of going through your head on the kids ministry side? We'll I know you and I talked a little bit last week too, but like what things are you kind of processing and thinking through right now that, yeah.
Yeah, so in a normal world, we would do some sort of like fall kickoff, like big event, inflatables. We bought a popcorn machine a few years ago, which was the best investment ever.
As long as you're not the one that has to clean it.
Which I am, but it's still a great investment. But monetarily, still a great investment. Yeah. But some of those things, trying to rethink it. This Friday, we're actually going to do like a Wheels Up event where people bring their bike or skates or those kinds of things. It can be outside. They're not having to come in the building or share any of those kinds of things. We'll probably have some like water bottles and just individually packaged snacks. But it'll be a family event as well. And that way it's not all on me or volunteers to separate kids. It's on mom and dad to kind of oversee that their kids are not running up to everyone and their mom and hugging them. And so that's kind of our easy launch into stuff. Yeah. We are supposed to start back on site kids stuff August 9th. And so I'm still working through what some of those details actually look like. We've been online doing Zoom calls every week. and just creating some sort of Bible story video on Sunday mornings for families while they're at home. But that's kind of where I'm at, is just still kind of in the in-between of not really sure what that looks like once we're back, but also like hitting crunch time of needing to figure that out.
So a couple questions that came to my mind. One, with the, like, so basically people are like bringing their bikes or scooters or whatever, like to the church parking lot or whatever. Is that basically what you're doing?
Yeah, we have a back parking lot and then like a side parking lot. So there's
Yeah.
like people can still park, and we can put cones up. So there'll be a whole, our big parking lot area will just be, I think a couple of our other NC West people had done something similar to this, either pre-COVID or in the midst of this. So I kind of stole their idea or borrowed it.
Yeah, no, that's a cool idea.
But we'll just set up a area for them to just play, and just because a lot of them we haven't had anything here. And so a lot of them haven't seen each other since March. And so just giving kids an opportunity to kind of do something where there's not a whole lot of structure that we're having to figure out those details, but giving them space to be kids, and for the parents to kind of sit and talk with other parents and just rest in that too.
That's really cool. Now, with you guys opening August 9th, are you planning for now? Is the plan kind of like kids ministry as usual with programming stuff? Or are you kind of making some adoptions, or just not quite sure yet because it's 3 weeks away?
Yeah, kind of in theory, business as usual, but different. Like, I don't know exactly what that but different looks like, especially in regards for like preschool. For elementary, like that's the room that I'm in. And so I can kind of figure out some of those things, but my biggest struggle has been on the like 5 and under side of things. So some of the games and activities and those things will have to look different, especially for preschoolers, where it's usually very hands-on craft, those sorts of things. In the elementary school room, you know, there are different games we can do, but that's kind of where I'm at, and kind of hitting that crunch time, but trying to process through some of the options.
That's really helpful.
So we are actually already back fully meeting with our kids ministry at this point. Our church opened beginning of June, and we did like family style services for a month. But like the overall decision of the church was to have kids fully opened by the 12th of July. So we've already had a couple weeks back doing our thing, and it's definitely been interesting and weird because I'm immunocompromised, and a lot of my leaders are in vulnerable situations, just like I'm sure many of your leaders are if they're, you know, in that older age group and things like that. And so trying to walk through what we needed to do to try to keep our leaders safe well was a bit of a challenge, because initially when the church wanted to open, they wanted kids open as well, but I only had 3 of my leaders out of, you know, all of them that were ready to be back with, and there was no way to do nursery, preschool, and our elementary ages with only 3 people. So, you know, we kind of, you know, tried to figure out how to make that work for at least for the month, and doing the family services and stuff. And then, so at this point, what we've been doing on Sundays, whenever the kids come in, our elementary and our preschool, they meet together in the gym initially for our large group time for worship together. So I have literally squares taped out 6 foot apart, like all over. And so we guide them into a square. We play Floor is Lava. We play Hokey Pokey. We play Simon Says, like games that you can do kind of in that space. We do poop deck so that you can like jump around and things like that. So then we do our worship together, and the preschoolers are dismissed to their classroom. And then after we do our lesson together, our elementary ages are split into their small groups, like our usual format. But within the small groups, I have different tables set up that allow for distancing. I had to go out and buy all new supplies for like extra packs of crayons, because, you know, in churches you have like the bucket of crayons, which I can't.
The bucket of half crayons.
Because you can never find the color you need. I don't understand why churches do this, guys. Okay, but So I went and bought like individual packs of crayons and pouches, scissors and glue sticks. I made sure that we had enough for every kid to have their own thing, so there was no sharing of supplies.
Got it.
Even in all the craft stuff that we do, there's no sharing of supplies. I made up like individual Lego kits that once they're done with their small group portions, they have like a bag of Legos they're given, and it's kind of theirs for the day. And then that gets fully cleaned and taken care of. I've been making homemade Play-Doh, so that way we can literally give the kids their glob. They take that, put it in a Ziploc bag, and it goes home with them. It's not anything that's still going to be shared among the group. So we've literally been trying to make sure that everything is, nobody's touching it except for my leaders.
Right.
And even then, we have hand sanitizer literally right there that they're using before they even touch anything.
Totally. Yeah. What are some of the? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Just in our preschool and in our nursery, I pulled out probably half of the items that we have in there that I have for a rotation. So I have like another room. It's not a spare room, but at this point it's what it is, because I had to pull out a lot of the materials and stuff that we had in there so that we can rotate through our things more frequently.
Right.
And added like extra things, space wise for like our preschool in particular. Our nursery, we made sure that parents were fully aware if they were leaving their child with us in the nursery that they knew there would be no social distancing, because that's impossible when you need to change a diaper. There's just some things that are absolutely impossible. And then as far as like some of the other procedures that we have in place, we are following our governor's school reopening plan. We wanted it to be as consistent as possible for our kids, because it's already been, a rough enough year. We don't want to have this situation of, well, they have to wear a mask at school, but why don't they here? And this whole back and forth thing. So we decided that we were going to run as smoothly and consistently with possible with our school district, so that way we could make that consistency happen. So that means like all of our leaders are masked, the kids are masked whenever they come in and out of the building, in our common areas, in our large group time. The only time that it changes is when they go to their small groups or into like the preschool room. They're allowed to take them off then, and that's because according to the reopening plan, kids once in their classrooms, as long as it's just their classrooms, their masks can come off. However, our state has issued a like mandate, so now 5 and up have to wear them anytime you're indoor. So like everybody is fully masked at this point. So
remind me again what state you're in. I'm sorry. Michigan. That's right. That's right.
And
so
honestly, our kids have had no problems like wearing their mask or things like it's actually been really smooth.
Yeah, kids tend to be a little bit more flexible than adults. But so a couple questions. Zinger. Okay. One question. Since you've been open in a couple weeks, what would be like maybe your two like best learnings for us as somebody who's kind of done this for a couple weeks? I know other people have been open too, but like for you, Amanda, like what are maybe like 1 or 2 things that you're like, hey, here's something that I've learned about reopening and like having physical gatherings? What are a couple things that you've learned?
Well, I mean, obviously nobody's on the same page.
Okay.
Trying to get your team on the same page as much as possible is going to be key. So all of the decisions that we made, at least on the kids side of things, were made by my team, not just me, but by my team, because I wanted to make sure that we were on the same page as much as possible, that we were in agreement as much as we could be going forward. Because even on our team, we were all across the board at where people were like, we had both extremes and then like a whole cluster.
Has anyone else ever experiencing that everyone has a different opinion about all of this, right? Like it's kind of like the norm, right? Like every parent, every family system, even within our teams, everybody's having these different things of opinions. And so, yeah, I think it's just important to highlight that, because I've talked to a few people over the last couple of weeks that they felt very isolated in that. And it's kind of, I think sometimes just helpful for all of us to hear like, hey, like there's a lot of inconsistency for all of us right now. And I think it's just helpful, like to all acknowledge that. So yeah, sorry to interrupt, Amanda, but I just think it's important to like kind of go like, hey, that's all of us too. Like it's just good. So
no, and that's totally where I was before this. Like I just felt totally isolated and like, alone in that. But then the more I worked with my team, the better we seem to be able to come together. And so with that, don't be afraid to lead. Make sure you're praying through what God has for you, but don't be afraid
Good.
to speak up and lead, because that's what they need. And if you have the vision for the kids ministry of what needs to happen, don't be afraid to say that.
Really good.
And stick with that. And that's the other thing is, whatever you decide, stick with it. Don't be wishy-washy,
That's
flip-floppy,
good.
because then that really confuses people even more. So make sure you have everything that you want, like, laid out as much as possible. And that's what we did. So before we opened, we rewrote up our sick policy that included COVID information, like what we would
That's good.
expect if someone in their family was positive or things like that. We also wrote up a what to expect plan, so where check-in would be and what that would look like, because it's
good.
not at our normal location. We wanted to make sure we had extra space for that, and what each, nursery and preschool, what every piece of it would look like in that what to expect. And then if you have any things that are more controversial, so for us, like the whole masking issue, I wrote up a specific, like, individual letter of why we were doing what we were doing. And like I said, that was because we wanted that consistency for our
Good.
kids, which,
Yeah.
even though a lot of people are across the board on that, having that written out and laid out and showing why we were doing it was reasonable for most of our people to understand.
That's great. Yeah, that's so helpful. Yeah, that's really, really helpful. Cool. Thanks for sharing all that. That's really great.
That's our Sundays. And then, like, Wednesdays, right now we alternate every other week with our youth to use our big field. So on Wednesday nights, we're doing as many outdoor things as possible that allow us to spread out, still watching things that we're handling together. So I mean, like, it's all those things, but.
Cool.
I've been forced to say, hey, Amanda, would you mind sharing those policies with us?
Yeah, I can attach what I wrote up, what we did, what we mailed to all of our families, and what we posted on our social media,
Awesome.
what we're going by.
A couple of things that you mentioned that I think are really helpful is, obviously you mentioned that, like, clarity of where you are as a team, which I think is really great. And some of that clarity, I think, again, just to acknowledge some of the tension, some of that clarity we all have had input on, and then some of that clarity in some of our ministries has been decided for us. And so finding those, like, right, like, let's just be real talk for a minute. Like, some of the clarity we've gotten to get for us as a team, other that clarity has been handed down. But as long as we make sure that we're clear on that clarity, I think I appreciated your word of sticking with whatever that is, so that there's not, like, these random exceptions that create confusion for people. And then the third thing was just, what are the school systems doing, which I know in kids ministry, that tends to be our MO more readily. Like, student ministry can kind of, like, deviate a little bit easier from kind of school policy at times. And they see, the game, bro. Student ministry can kind of, like, sometimes we can get a little bit of a pass, but when we're doing kids ministry, when we're in kids ministry, parents are looking for that consistent experience that looks like school and school language. And so I think that's just thanks for bringing that up, Amanda, because I think that that's really, really helpful. And I think it also offers us a little bit of protection. It's a little bit harder to argue with if restrictions feel a little bit tight. It's a little bit harder when you go, well, hey, I'm sorry that this is very difficult for you. This is difficult for all of us right now, but we're really trying to honor the guidelines that are also handed down from our school systems as well, which is really, really great. So thanks for all that, Amanda. That is super helpful.
Like I said, that was our whole thing was, if kids are going to be required to do this in the fall, we should be a part of that process now.
Smart.
To help transition now, because, starting a new school year is hard enough.
Yeah.
And if they are going back, if this is what this looks like, how can we help in that matter? So
I love the way you're thinking about that too, because that's such a great care piece for our kids of going, like, hey, like, you can practice what this looks like at church, so that when you're going back to school, like, it's going to help them transition. I just appreciate that, man. That's wise.
Teacher has to, like, hands-on work with or whatever. So I mean, and that's just like our whole state's guidelines right now. Once our district itself puts out more information, we'll adjust as necessary. But, like, when our state goes to phase 5, we'll adjust to phase 5 as well.
Totally.
Like,
that's really great.
Just easy, clear transition points.
So good. Thanks for sharing all that, for sure. That's awesome. That's awesome. Somebody else. That's awesome. Very helpful.
I can go. I'm mainly here to learn, because I'm not very creative in this, but here's what we've done, and it seemed to gone okay. So
You're killing me right now.
Speaking from a place of reality. So yeah, along with what you're saying, Amanda, we've been following or are ready to follow what the school system does. In Indiana, schools go back here in a couple weeks, here beginning of August, and so for student ministry, we've been meeting outside and during the summer for the last couple weeks. We had a couple bonfires, and then kind of just doing youth group, really deconstructed and very low programming, and it's going pretty well. It's hot outside, but it's been going well, and it seems to be the safest place for it. And but we're gonna let school get started, and then we're pushing our start date back from where it normally would be. We normally start like a week or two after the school year would start. We're gonna start like 3 or 4 weeks after the school year starts, and that way we can really learn, okay, what is the student experience like at school, and we're just gonna mimic that.
That's a cool idea.
And so we got a lot of teachers and connections in there, so we'll really, I mean, we've read the data that's come out, but we're really going to be able to say, okay, now what actually happens and what's actually helpful, and
what will the school tweak 2 weeks in too, right? Like that's a clever idea too.
That's why we're kind of letting that time eclipse. So when they're like, yeah, that sounded good on paper, but it's terrible in reality, we can just not have to deal with that. So we're excited is probably the wrong word to mask up and gear up for all that, but we're excited to have youth group back in that capacity. But like I said, we've been doing the summer stuff outside. That's gone really well. Kids have responded really well to that, and it's kind of neat just to take away all the bells and whistles of youth ministry, and like there's no games, there's just none of that stuff, and we're just meeting together, we're worshiping, and we're talking about the word, and that's been really cool to see students be excited about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Gibson, what's something that you've learned from because you have been open through the entire pandemic on the child care side?
For our daycare. Yeah, children's ministries shut down.
Right.
But yeah.
What is something that you feel like you've learned on the daycare side that would be helpful? Because you guys have been open the whole time. Like, what's something that's been helpful from that side of it? Because you guys were open the whole time. So what's something that you guys have been like, oh, this was learning for us?
Yeah, don't run a daycare. That's what. No, there's a grain of truth to that, but no, we're glad to stay open. We became best friends with the health department. We had them on speed dial,
right?
And God's really been good to us. We didn't know how it was going to work financially, but it's really a story of God's provision. Really, I mean, even coming down to food provision. I mean, stores were wiped out for food around here. I'm sure same with many of you, and we didn't know how we're going to feed these 100 kids. So it was really a kind of a George Mueller experience at times, just praying for meals, and then they would show up.
Wow.
But yeah, probably the biggest thing with the daycare stuff is really manage the parent expectation ahead of time. Like, get in front of that.
Cool.
It's kind of what you touched on, Amanda, with kind of saying, here's what the experience is going to be like when you show up. But if you can put into writing or on social media or even phone calls just ahead of time, this is what the new stuff is going to look like, or here's what we're going to do. And that was really helpful for us, because we learned really quickly parents were reasonably high strung. Right? There's a lot of tension, a lot of stress, lots changing. They're really concerned about the safety of their kids. As we all were. So I'm not faulting that, but to be able to help them anticipate the change instead of just changing it, that served us well. And we're continuing to do that. I'm trying to think what else. Part of it too is always communicate. This is the plan for now.
That's good.
And then point them to the communication pipeline. So
that's
if you
really good.
Out the best way to communicate yet, pick a way that's going to work well, and then say, all right, this is the plan for now. And we would start dating and timing the stuff, because things were changing so fast around here. Like, this is the plan as of April 24th, 7:30 p.m. Like it could change after that, but yeah. And so I've kind of carried that into the other wings of ministry for students and children's ministry. Like, this is the plan for now, the next 2 weeks, but to stay up to date on our plan, go to our Instagram and our Facebook, and you'll always be up to date that way. And
So good.
That's helped us kind of move as one and move our organization in one direction, and everyone staying on board.
That's super helpful, bro. That's such a smart way to do that communication of for now or for the day, like, because like you said, it's changing so quickly right now. That's
we learned
awesome.
it the hard way, so
That's awesome. That's awesome. So the other thing I wanted to mention, everybody, real quick too, is that a lot of what we're talking right now too is about managing like those expectations and change. If you did not catch Anita Eastlack's teaching during Fuel on leading change, I just posted the link in the chat. That is one of the best teachings on leading through change I have ever heard in my entire life. I mean, it's such a helpful framework for leading change. And so just consider that. And then the other thing too, I would just, if anybody has like documents of like that they've produced for this, like how you're communicating with parents, those things, as people are talking or whatever, if you would just throw those in the chat, just so that we can all see different examples, because that's, I think, the beauty of these calls is because we're from all over the place. If you've got some communications that, you know, either documents or emails or stuff like that you've created that you've used to communicate with people, even if you're like, hey, this doesn't seem really brilliant, still post it. Because one thing I've learned is like, sometimes those little tweaks of language that we read in somebody else, we're like, oh, that's a better way to say that than what I was thinking. You know, like it's just really helpful. So if anybody has any of that stuff, don't hesitate to share it if you would in the chat, and that'd be super awesome. But Nacy, bro, dude, tell us what's going on at Old Generations, what you guys are processing, all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, it's good. You know, we are back in person the last, I think we've been 3 or 4 weeks. We started kids ministry 2 weeks ago. So I'd say like if you're in kids ministry, just know like numbers are going to be low. We're typically 250 to 300 on a normal week. Probably even during the summer, close to that 250 mark. We're probably just under 100 right now. We are doing VBS that starts tomorrow. So they're doing like, it's a 3-week VBS, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So you sign up for like Tuesday night. And so we already have them pre-populated groups where they're actually with the same, it's a family style VBS. So it's 6 to 7:30. Part of that will be inside. Well, again, our auditorium seats 1,000. So I think there'll be about 100 to 150 there per night. But they'll be in the same family units and the same family units together for the inside activity and also outside. So we're working on that and how we get them in and out and stuff like that. So I'd say, know this, like with kids, I mean, put a plan together, do the best you can when it's time. It's unique too. Everything we hear here in Colorado would be fairly similar to Michigan. I know for those guys who are in Michigan, our governor's pretty aggressive on stuff. We just went back to mandatory masks being mandated and stuff like that, outside and inside. We live in Weld County, so again, we're kind of like the oil, like rah-rah, like red Republican gun-toting county up here. So what applies to Weld County probably is different than the states. Like I just ran into my buddies who were cops on the walking trail a minute ago, and neither one had masks on, riding in a Ranger, and they were like 2 feet away from me talking. So it'll just be interesting. I think, again, put a plan together. What I'd say is, and be willing to like change it as quick as possible too. Again, we probably work with about 8 to 10 different school systems, but probably about 40 to 50 different schools locally from elementary through. So we don't even have a plan from our schools yet at all. Schools can wait to the last minute to get it to us. So we're doing the best we can. Again, we didn't want to freak out when we saw numbers. I would say this, we're probably back in our Greeley location about a third, about 30 to 40% of what we'd normally be on a weekend with with kids. Kids were probably a third as well. But I'll be honest, with students, it was super easy to bring them back and gather. Part of that, I think, is because we're doing it outside. And partly, I think parents are just like, they need something for their kids. I had parent after parent just be like, hey, thank you guys so much for doing something. We've seen a huge uptick in kids who are part of our church who hadn't been a part of programming, probably due to sports and other stuff. So we feel like we're probably only 15 or 20 away from being what we normally would be at. So we are kind of I'd say this, we do the best we can with what we put in place. So like prepackaged food type stuff, the best we can. We are trying to be creative as we can with large group games and stuff like that. But again, everyone try to do the best to sanitize before and after and do some things, but try to do worship, try to do music. Small groups is probably the biggest part of what we do because we just want kids talking with other leaders. So we're trying to do, again, fall kickoff here. We're trying to move everybody up in August and try to have it be as normal as possible, but being ready to like change it whenever, because kids missed out on Guatemala missions this summer because they missed out on summer camp. We're hopefully trying to do some kind of fall or winter retreat. It just all depends on like where things shake out, you know, in the state, in the county, all of that kind of stuff. So I feel super duper encouraged with youth, to be honest. Like, way easier to regather than I thought it would be. Kids, I think they're doing good. I think they're just trying not to get discouraged yet till school starts.
Right.
And our adult in gatherings, we're fine. We again, our language is pretty much, whether in person or online, it's still the same. Like, so we make no distinction between online. And I would say if you're an online church and in person, do everything you can to make sure you're reaching both crowds as effectively and passionately as possible. So even though we may have had 500 spread out over 4 services here between Greeley and Windsor this week, or 600, we probably still had 1,500 online. So,
right.
And I'm kind of helping make sure with our staff and others that we're just as passionate about our hosting there, our follow-up process, kind of everything we're doing. So,
it's good.
Yeah, I would say this, man, just get ready to like be creative. And in fact, even being creative, it's just being ready for what's ever there. And then there's some families who you thought would be bought in really early to getting back together who are like, nope, not yet.
Yep.
And I'd say this, don't take anything personal in this season. And that's
so
really
good,
hard
bro.
to do as a pastor. And as a youth pastor, like, just don't take it personal, and really just, again, just do what you can in your region and area which you can focus in and do, and, you know, meet the needs the best you can.
It's so good, bro. The whole personal thing too, I think I'm so glad you shared that, Ian. That's such strong wisdom, because especially when we start talking about like our volunteers, right? Like the people who have been laboring with us, and it's like, you know, we all have those volunteers that we like, you just know they're in your back pocket, whatever you need. And also the pandemic hits and they're just slow to come back. And so to be able to lead ourselves through those emotions and not take that personally right now is huge, 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 huge. So dude, Ian, as always, bro, so good. So good. Somebody else, anything. I mean, we've got about 15 more minutes here to hang out. So anything at all. This has been so good already. This is awesome. Anything at all.
So this probably won't be all that helpful for most of you, but we've been doing in-person stuff outdoors at various locations around our county since the beginning of June. Our numbers have been at or above where we were during the school year.
Wow.
For youth group, we've been doing in-person church services since the same time, beginning of June. Those services were, they're a little less attended, but not a whole lot less. If we were running 220 before, we're running about 190 now. Most everybody in our congregation was ready to get back together way before we did get back together. We were able to make some of the decision making for our youth because before any of the quarantine happened, we did have one student who had coronavirus and didn't know it and came to youth group, and he's that kid who shows up early and talks way too close to your face. So it went around the youth group. We had quite a few kids who were sick in January and February, and since then some of them have taken the antigen test and they've tested positive for the antibodies, so we know it's been through our youth group. So we were able to make the decision to come back in person and know that more than half of our students have either been exposed or had it. So that helped our decision-making process. We're still being very careful with our kids ministry because that wasn't affected as much. And we know that that's where a lot of crossover between families that wouldn't have contact otherwise would be. So kids ministry has not started back up for our church. our children's pastor has done a survey of the parents and the leaders to see where everyone feels, and she's still receiving those and hasn't come up with a plan yet. She'll be doing that sometime in the next couple weeks. But I mean, that's where we are.
That's great.
We're planning almost everything as normal for the youth ministry starting in September. I know we'll have some additional things that we'll be implementing then, but I mean, where we are now, the first event was a bonfire in my backyard, and I had hand sanitizer and wipes for people to wipe down I was asking my adult leaders to roast all the s'mores and wipe them down in between. And I had a couple adult leaders look at me, the ones that I expected to be like really strict about this. They looked at me and they said, "Why are we using that?" And I was like, "I just assumed that we'd be, actually wiping things down in between people." And they were like, "Okay, I guess we can do that." And I watched them later and they weren't. And that's about where we are. So like I said, probably not all that helpful for you. But that's what we're working on right now.
Great, man. I think you just highlight the breadth of expression of how all this plays out, right? Like, so it's really, really helpful. Really helpful.
Well, I can go. At the start of this, our church had went through a whole staff change. And so it was myself and another staff are the pastoral staff. I'm the director of children's ministries, and she's our campus pastor. And then the other is just support staff. So we already had a bunch of people, shifting and changing. So when we came back in person, we weren't sure how many people would show up or who to talk to, that kind of thing. But we have been back in person since June, and we've been doing family style worship. And one of my volunteers said, "Hey, I know these preschoolers can't handle this. I want to take them out, and we have a big 4-year area." So she's been taking them out. We use Orange, so she's been using that curriculum with the preschoolers. And it's worked great. I mean, because they get to experience worship. We're trying to train these parents that they can lead their children and that their children can experience God in an adult service. So that's been going really well. We also have what we used to call the green room. It's now the family room where the babies and twos can go in there and hang out. And that's actually being staffed now by one volunteer a week to watch. Our campus pastor adopts children, and so she had an infant, and that was just a need that we needed to fill, and it's worked great. I mean, but it's kind of, we're playing catch up and trying to figure it all out, but it's working. And so, and we're doing the kids haven't done anything mainly on Wednesday nights. The youth have been meeting because there's not a whole lot and they can space out. But our children's ministry, we're hosting a family sidewalk chalk party this Wednesday night. So just giving the kids, something to do. We also met at Sunset Slush, which is a slushy place here, which was really interesting, and took a picture in front of the cigar place. So, I mean, but, and then we posted it on our Instagram.
It's great.
So, but it was, I mean, and people want to be
absolutely
together. They want to connect. Yep. They're tired of being in their houses and with their families. So they want to know that there are other people out there struggling too. So
it's great. That's awesome. Cool. Well, we got a couple more minutes. Does anybody have any burning questions or things you're like, man, I wonder what everybody's doing with this, or anything? Anything that's people are wondering about or whatever? So we still got some more time.
I do got a general question for everybody. And we could even use the Zoom features here answering yes or no, but I'm curious for your specific area for back to school. Are fall programming such as like school activities, marching band, football, all that stuff, is that happening or not? And if it is happening or if it's not happening, I'd be curious about how you guys are adjusting or moving forward to that. But I guess the simple question I'm really asking for everybody, yes or no, is fall programming happening in your area for schools?
The last thing I just heard is most of our programming is happening in our county. But because a lot of the leagues go past the county line. What they're saying is while there would be a football team, they would be on a limited schedule, so they could only play other high schools within the counties so that they can keep the county numbers down. That hasn't been made officially yet, but that's what they're looking at, is they can't do a full league. So okay.
We're a yes on the marching band, but they're having to follow strict protocols. Like every time they go, I have to fill out a paper because my son's on it. We had to fill out a paper that he's not had COVID and is not showing any symptoms. So they're being really strict with all that, but they are trying to do that, to give the kids some normalcy.
Ours are to a limited capacity. It depends on like what phase we're in. They are also doing the strict thing as far as you have to have temperature taken, you have to have the questionnaire filled out every single time they go to practice or anything like that. But even for like once they actually get into the games and stuff like that, if we're still in the same phase that we're in right now, like volleyball, for instance, like the team could compete, but there would be absolutely no spectators. Football would only be limited to like 100 people, even outdoor in the stadium. And so it's very dependent on what phase we're in.
Ours are happening according to the priority that the school places on them. Like one of our local high schools, it was kind of comically, they are pushing forward with the football program, but not the marching band. And it was kind of funny.
I'm just 15 minutes down the road from Pastor Amanda, so same thing. Just very different response within the church, which is odd.
Yeah, I don't know that I've heard anything about Colorado yet that would be of any value.
Cool. Sweet. All right. Well, hey, a couple things as we finish up here. This comes back to a conversation Zach and I were actually having earlier today of just like the hidden gold hidden in this awful thing called COVID. Although I think all of us would have preferred COVID didn't happen, there is a chance for us to really try some things and be flexible and adaptable in this time. And so really, like at some point for each of us, making that shift from managing crisis to going, hey, like we've got some opportunities to maybe try some things we've wanted to try, or kill some programs we've wanted to kill, or minister to some people uniquely. And just want to encourage us that in the midst of all of these hard things to find that yes again. And then this phrase that I've thought about a few times is like, I think these are the times where we have to remember our why. Like, why did we say yes to ministry? Why did we say yes to students? Why did we say yes to kids? Because when we have these hard things where it's demanding us to maybe flex muscles that we've either never flexed before, that we've maybe feel like we don't have, or just aren't developed really well. Because for some of us, change and it is like, and the unknown is like exhilarating adrenaline. And it's just like, put the pedal down and let's go. Ian Nacy, I'm looking at you. Like Ian's one of those guys, he's like, woo, let's go, get in the 4Runner and let's run. For others of us, it can kind of create some paralysis. And neither are right or wrong. I think how we respond to that, because you can't run on adrenaline forever either. Like it's kind of you can't do both of these for a long time. But what I want to encourage each of us is if we remember our why, it will fuel our how. If we each can remember the why we do what we do, it will fuel our how, and in turn, it will fuel our how long. So our ability to remember our why we do it will inform the choices of how we do ministry right now, and will also fuel us for the long run of how long this may go. And so I just want to encourage each of us today as you just encouraged the daylights out of me, this is just so exciting to hear what everything's going on, is let's remember why we're doing what we're doing. It's because kids and students and families need to encounter Jesus. And so when you're knee deep in policy and masks and trying to track down hand sanitizer and trying to figure out how to word this the right way, we are eliminating barriers for people to encounter Jesus in the midst of really hard times. And so just so grateful for each of you. I love you a ton. Kristen we'll post these links to in the chat once we post this video in our Facebook group. We'll get all these resources up to you. Be sure to check out that resource I posted of Anita and leading through change. It'll be really, really helpful. Thanks, Amanda, for sharing your documents that you shared. That's super, super awesome as well. And then two, be sure to check out that resource I created for you, how to lead when you're tired. And again, it's got the video I made. It's got fill in blanks, and it also has a PowerPoint if you want to teach it and to somebody too, or teach it to your team. So just more love to you. I hope it's helpful for you. So love you a ton. Thanks for hanging out. Can I pray for us? Would that be okay? Awesome. And then as always, we don't have another Next Gen call scheduled right now, but as always, text me, email me, call me if you're like, hey, like here's a topic we need to cover. And I was going to tell you this too. We have 3 killer book cohorts this fall that we're doing. We're doing one on multi-ethnic conversations. We're doing one, which is a kids ministry cohort. It's a 7-part video series that we recorded with Annette Shafstrom from Kids Ministry Architects that literally, I'm going to walk that group through those teachings of like the nuts and bolts of kids ministry. Like it's something that genuinely would cost you thousands of dollars if you went and tried to take like as an e-course that we're just going to do for free, and I'll walk you through that. And then I'm offering we're going to offer this one called Longing for Revival, which is just if you're feeling tired and your soul's weary and you just need something that's going to minister to your heart, like jump into that Longing for Revival cohort. That one's going to just be a ton of fun to explore what revival is, where it comes from, how does God do it, and all that kind of fun stuff. So you'll get emails about all that stuff. I want to tell you about that too, but let me pray for us. We'll be done. Cool. Jesus, we love you, and I thank you for these friends. I thank you for their labor in your kingdom. And God, I just pray for strength to endure. God, I pray for innovation and creativity and clarity and unity. God, that you would help them find the places of agreement on their teams, that you'd help them find the places of agreement with their parents. God, I pray that you'd go before them with joy and excitement and clarity. God, I pray you go before them with conversations they may have with parents who are just having a hard time and are unclear. God, help each of us. I pray this over myself, and I pray this over each person on this call. Help us to not take anything in this season as a personal attack or any of that, God, that you would just guard our hearts and our mind in Christ Jesus, that the peace of God that transcends all understanding would guard our hearts and our minds as we lead through this season. And so we just pray grace and favor over that. And Father, we just again pray that you would call people to yourself, that this would be a season not just marked by illness, but that it would be marked by people saying yes to you, that we would look back on 2020 and say, that's when God, you begin to spark fresh seasons of revival and of transformation and of conversions, God, that more people will come into the kingdom of God through this season than we've seen in our lifetime. We beg you to do it, Father. And so we just say yes to you, Jesus, and everything that you have. We love you. It's your name. Amen and amen. Cool. Amen. Awesome. Love you all a ton. Thanks for hanging out. Watch your email. We got fun stuff coming. Crystal will be posting a bunch of stuff too, so it'll be good.
Bye, guys.